What would it look like if you stopped spending money? Okay, it's probably impossible for us to completely stop spending money. But what if we could cut it down? Slow down our consumption by 10, 15, 20%, or even 50%. What will your life look like? What would you have more of? More money, more time, more opportunities for you to do the things that you want to do? What would you have less of? Less debt, less worries about having the latest thing, less clutter, less things to clean and maintain, and maybe less time to be at work. How differently would you be spending your time if you significantly slowed down your consumption? In this video, we are going to walk through a scenario where you slow consumption, where you slow spending, and perhaps stop spending for multiple periods of time. This is going to be a two-part video, so make sure you subscribe so you can watch the second portion. For the first part of this two-part video, we are going to break down some of the triggers that get us to spend. The second part, we will walk through some action items, some key strategies that we can take on to significantly reduce our consumption, save us money, and save us time. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Catherine Agupjan. I am a financial educator and sustainability advocate and a former ad tech PM. Here at Sisters for Fi, we cover personal finance, minimalism, sustainability, and motherhood. This video was inspired by the book The Day the World Stopped Shopping by J.B. McKinnon. In this book, McKinnon embarks on a thought experiment to find out what would happen if the world suddenly cut consumption by 25%. Now, this thought experiment actually happened briefly when the world shut down due to the coronavirus. If you recall those early months of 2020, the world significantly cut consumption when the coronavirus suspended a lot of our normal activities. As we retreated into our homes, we were forced to make do. The book goes through the nuances of how cutting down consumption would affect people, planet, and profit. We learned during the early days of the lockdown that we live in a very interconnected world. And sometimes one man's spending is actually another man's income. The book goes on to go through a lot more nuances so that you can understand the impact of a reduction in consumption. There is definitely an impact on the economy and people's livelihoods when we stop shopping. But it doesn't mean that there are not solutions. There's also a new way of thinking, new problems we need to be solving when we do stop consumption. I encourage you to take a look at the book, understand the perspective of the thought experiment, and see if you can take on some of what the author has laid out to reduce consumption. So, spoiler alert, unfortunately, it will be very difficult for the world to stop shopping. The pull of consumption, of capitalistic society is very strong, but we can reduce and slow down our consumption. Now, let's take a look at some of the triggers that get us to consume. To truly understand your personal triggers, I would absolutely recommend that you sit down and write down all of the things that you spent in the past week or month, and next to it, write down which of these triggers contributed to that spending. We do need to spend some time reflecting on some of our past behaviors to truly understand how to move forward when it comes to slowing down our spending and our consumption. The first thing that we want to look at is our own habits and routines. This isn't necessarily a trigger, but the fact that you're running on autopilot. How is your daily routine and your daily habits causing you to spend money? I do have a longer video on this, which I will link in the description so that you can learn more about it. And in that video, we walk through going through your daily routine. Where are you habitually spending money, putting down a credit card? And a lot of these things is because we're just on autopilot. Sometimes too busy to stop and reflect if that's something that we need. We're also doing things because it's what's always been done. Maybe you've watched your parents do this and so forth. So you're just internalizing that habit and routine. And we need to stop, pause, and reflect to see if that habit is serving us and serving our future. The next trigger that you are going to want to look at is look at your insecurities. Now, if you are just standing by yourself alone, perhaps you're comfortable in your own skin. But the minute you start comparing yourself to others on social media, on TV, on anywhere else, some of these insecurities will start to creep up. Perhaps it's insecurities about our own body, our life, our home, our car, our clothes, and so much more. Because some of that media and some of what you're looking at triggers some of your insecurities, you automatically spend money to alleviate those insecurities so that you become a bit more comfortable. We often will buy to compensate, thinking that the next item will bring us on par or get us to another level of happiness. There is definitely a lot of aspirational media and commercials and advertisings and marketing out there. So we just need to be a little conscious of what those are. What are our insecurities? How are some of these aspirational images making us insecure or making us uncomfortable, and how are they getting us to buy things to reduce that insecurity? The next trigger that you are going to look at is stress. What does stress look like to you? How does stress make me feel? How does it manifest in your life? Now, stress comes in many forms, and many of us have many different ways of coping with stress. And certainly one of them can be shopping. Unfortunately, what this does, it keeps us in this cycle of stress, shop, shop leads to debt, debt, stress, and so forth. So we need to cut that cycle and figure out other ways to reduce that stress or figure out a different coping mechanism to address that stress. Now, I remember clearly when I was working in corporate America, I would go every Friday to the mall after work because I felt that it was a stressful week and I needed to decompress. The sad part was that each time I would buy something that I probably did not need, it meant I needed to be at work longer because I would have to pay for those things that I didn't need. And we just have to be mindful of that cycle we put ourselves in. How do we break that cycle? How do we get out of it so that we are not constantly actually putting additional stress on ourselves in the guise of stress release? Have you looked at your calendar lately? Have you also assessed how you're spending your time? The next thing that we should look at is our calendar. More specifically, the time that you are using. Are you using your time effectively? The challenge with many of us is that we are either bouncing from one activity to the other, and certainly happens if you are taking care of others in your household, or we are just not being intentional with our time, either binge watching shows when we know we shouldn't be, or just wasting time away on social media. What this leads us to do is to actually opt for buying convenience items, maybe going for takeout instead of cooking, or just defaulting to buying something as a solution to problems. And what we need to do is start reflecting on our time and maybe carving out 1 or 2 hours a week where we have some thinking time to sit, so that if a problem comes up, we are thinking of alternative solutions instead of defaulting to buying something new or consuming something else. I hope this video has been helpful so far. Let me know by giving this video a like or sharing it with a friend. Also, let me know in the comments if some of these triggers resonate with you. Is there one I did not cover? Share that and let us know how you're addressing that trigger. Are you a hunter or a gatherer? Or are you both? One of the triggers that we also have to understand is something that came from our ancestors, from the caveman days when we were doing hunting and gathering. There is a little bit of a similar natural instinct when we go out for shopping where we're looking and hunting for the best deals. Perhaps we're gathering for those best deals. And we need to figure out that's a trigger for us. If that's something that you love to do, you want to do, you love being in that position, we need to figure out how else can you transfer those instinctual skills to something else that doesn't involve you spending money or you spending more. The next trigger that you are going to look for are these feelings of, I need this item because now I would feel like an adult. I need this item because now I would feel like I have arrived. I need this item because now I would feel like a professional woman. And there is going to be a lot of these things, right? Because for many of us, we saw an idealized version of work, life, home, in the movies, on TV, and we are going to try to emulate that. So, unfortunately, it keeps us in this cycle of spending so that we can meet that idealized version so that we live that life that we wanted. But the ideal life doesn't exist. We come from different backgrounds, experiences. There's no magic object that will define you as an adult. There's no magic object that will define you as a successful woman. Just need to step back a little bit and understand some of that mindset and thought process that come up when we buy certain things. Do your friends get you to consume? Do your friends push you to spend money? The next trigger that you're going to look at is your social circle. What are you doing on a daily basis? How are you hanging out with your friends that push you to spend money? Have you been honest with your friends that you are working on being debt free or that you are working on reducing your consumption? Have you suggested alternatives that you can do to reduce consumption? This is critical because our friends are our lifeblood. They can provide so much support, but they can also be a detriment to some of our goals. So we need to assess when we hang out with our friends how that contributes to our consumption and spending. It might be necessary that you pull back on hanging out with certain people if they're the kinds of people that push you to spend. I would also recommend coming up with alternatives. Say, instead of going shopping, can we just go for a walk instead? That way, you still have the opportunity to spend time with your friends, but not get into the triggers of spending money. The next trigger that you are going to want to look at is this concept of boredom. And it's crazy how we can still be bored given there's so much at our fingertips. But being bored may be more about lacking purpose or lacking clarity in what you should be doing or your next move. Instead of pursuing that next move, you use boredom or you use this extra time that you have to browse online, to browse through stores, and spend money there. So the next time you are bored and you automatically go to a retailer's website to browse around, rethink that habit, rethink that action. What else could you be doing with your time? Why are you bored? Are you not doing much of engaging work? Are you completing your tasks too soon? Are you just not very into what you're doing now, who you're hanging out with, and so forth? So take a critical look about what makes you bored or what brings up this feeling of boredom so that you can change that and change what you do if you are bored. The next trigger that might get you to consume a bit more is this excuse: hey, I'm already in debt. What's one more thing added to my credit card? How much harm will that lead? And this is more or less a trap because it gets you back in that cycle of just staying in debt, staying in the consumption mode, and not really figuring out how to get out of debt and how to leave that excuse behind. So, if this is something that you say to yourself, what you need to do is create really a strong plan to get out of debt and start with something simple to change that mindset. Are you a loyalty member? Do you want to sign up for a card? The next trigger that you're going to look for is loyalty or your loyalty rewards. Do you end up spending more money at your favorite retailer, at a store, because you are a member? This company is very popular and has one of the top loyalty rewards programs in the nation. They do a good job ensuring you come back to the store, ensuring you come back to spend money. So, I would like for you to just look at your loyalty membership. What brands do you have membership to? And look to see how much you've spent with that brand. I think if you kind of spin it a little bit differently and look at the cost of your brand loyalty, you might start rethinking if you need to be spending that much money on them. So, look to see if this is a trigger for you and look to see how much you're spending because you are a loyalty rewards member. As a rewards member, you also have first-hand access to sales and free shipping. So this can also add on to your consumption and something that we have to be mindful of. The next trigger that you're going to look for is this special event, special occasion, or even a vacation trigger, where for some reason we automatically want to get something new, whether it's a new dress for this special occasion or event, or maybe some new things for vacation. And we just need to be a little bit more mindful when those events happen. For me, this happens often. So, what I have been doing lately is to send a text to my sisters asking them if they have these items so that one, I don't have to buy it and I can reuse it. And more than likely, one of them has it. And I think it's a great way to just look at your circle, look around you to see if you can reuse and go to them to reduce your consumption. We also have to start changing our mindset so that when we buy something, it's not just for that one occasion. It's something that can be reused for a few more times, a few more years, because it's very wasteful to have things that you're only using because you're going on vacation or things that you are only wearing once to an event. So something to consider as you buy something is how often will you use it? Will you be using it for one event? Then maybe you need to find an alternative. Will you be using it several times? Then maybe it's good to invest in something a bit more quality. If you want more content like this, where we talk about personal finance, minimalism, sustainability, and motherhood, subscribe to Sisters for Fi. In the next video, the part 2 for this 2-part video, we are going to cover some ways for you to address these triggers. At the end of that video, I will help you come up with some rules to help curb your spending and reduce your consumption. Now, the rules will of course vary depending on the triggers that you have, but I'll give you some basics so that you can start implementing them and have a baseline foundation. So I will see you next week for that video. Bye!